You see the red line? All right, so this is a special meeting in the town of St. Paul, Thursday, August 8, 2024. The time is 7 o'clock. Call to order and roll call, please.
Mr. Simmons?
Here.
Mr. Trufino?
Here.
Mr. Graham?
Here.
Mr. Swanner?
Here.
Mr. Nail?
Here.
And Mr. Dryden is absent this evening.
Correct. So if everybody will, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance at this time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank y'all. We don't have any public here. Nobody signed any forms for the public comment section, so do we need to make a motion on that to
No,
close
sir.
it?
No, nothing at all.
Okay, nobody's here. So at this point, we go to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda for the approval of minutes from July 8th?
I'll make a motion to approve this consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion made. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? So going down to the regular agenda items at this time. We have a discussion and possible action regarding the resolution, or a resolution, to amend the list of individuals authorized to act on behalf of the town to perform the following tasks with public funds in text pool and text pool prime accounts. So at this time, transmit of funds for investments is what we're looking to do at the authorization, to withdraw funds from time to time, issue letters of instruction to text pool or text pool prime, and to take other actions deemed necessary or appropriate for the investment of the town's funds. So at this time, currently, we set up the bank accounts with A and B with three names, Scott's, David's, and mine. And that way, if someone is absent, we're able to still do the dual verification and still do business. The text pool was never set up with the three. And so me and Scott had talked about that, and we were kind of looking at doing the same thing there to make sure, no matter what we need to do, that we could make sure we had two people here for dual signature verification to make any moves with that money.
Well, also, I need to get access. I can work on the budget with what we are on fund balance, interest earned. But of course, when I start working in QuickBooks, I'm going to need access to the investment funds.
Yeah, because the other day I had to print it off and
Right.
send it to him for him to know what our totals were. He couldn't even get access to look at it. And so it's kind of important for our town administrator to be able to see that, to be able to run our budget and make moves accordingly.
So that's any combination of the three can
It's-
approve?
Any two
Any two people,
that's
that's great.
correct.
If
We'll
there's,
still-
yeah, and if there's any instructions that change, like if account is it closed or reopened, it'll take two of them to do that.
Okay.
So we're just giving those backups.
What happens if there's a contingency, in the event for contingency, business continuity? Well, okay, there shouldn't be any absence. Scratch from what I said.
Okay. Larry, any discussion? No, sir. Okay. So, Scott, do you have anything you want to weigh in on that?
No, I mean, this is just a housekeeping item, and typically this type of resolution would be in your consent agenda as well. But I broke it out this evening just to kind of give you a flavor of how the agendas are going to look like in the future. But this would be the type of item that you'd have on the consent agenda, along with the minutes or some kind of annual contract that just comes up on a regular basis. Items that typically are not controversial, you'll see on the consent agenda.
So, any more discussion? Might need discussion on this? Is there going to be a motion made for a resolution for the three signatures, giving access to test pool?
You need a resolution for that? I guess we.
I think it's a resolution, is it
Yeah, it's a
not?
resolution.
Yeah.
If you look at your memo I put in your packet, I think there's a motion on the bottom that references the resolution as well. I move to approve resolution 24-08-08.
Let me read that one more time. Okay, so for 5.1. I will make the motion that I move to approve the resolution number 24-0808, amending the town's authorized representatives who shall act on behalf of the town's investment funds.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So that was the only thing on the regular agenda for here. The main thing in this meeting this evening was going to be a budget workshop. I think, Robert, you had definitely asked for that, and so we're here to talk about that. I've been talking with Scott quite a bit on it. He's done a pretty good job putting together a pretty good package for this year. You did a great job. For this year, it was from me that I asked Scott that we not raise any taxes this year, no new revenue, that we remain neutral for 1 year and revisit, just based on the amount of money that we have to pull from, what we did last year, what we're able to do this year. We budgeted quite a bit for the court system coming up, and we're able to manage to get that. Is going to be set up here after budget time for a cost-effective measure. We've got the video here, very cost-effective as far as that goes for the public. And we're still working on a few other things, and we will be underneath the budget items that we had last year. So we're in pretty good shape. And Scott can speak more to that after looking through this, but we discussed that, and I think it's doable with remaining with the same income we had last year.
Okay, so, I just wanted to make sure we talk through it, because we all need to agree on the direction we're going. One of the main things that...
Did you want me to go through the PowerPoint real quick? Or?
Sure, we can do that. Let me explain why I asked to have a workshop, though. Last year, the previous council, and I do believe there should be some continuity, but there are 3 new members to the council, so maybe there's not going to be as much continuity on everything. But one of the things we talked about doing was starting to go down the road of making improvements. And I don't have copies of this, but I can pass it down, of concreting different parts of the town, and an idea of starting to do that over a 5 to 10 year plan. And the immediate need that was identified by KSA was the completing St. Paul Road. And if you've driven down it, it is starting to have a lot of patches and undulations when you drive. And so instead of doing a reclamation on roads like that, that's going to cost almost half or about a third the cost of concreting it, and then doing patches every year after that for 5 years plus, it may be advantageous for roads like St. Paul. In the future, I would propose Drain Drive, Paul Wilson Road, and any other road that's asphalt that needs to be completely redone to move towards concreting them. And so we have a lot of money in tax pool. Our auditors have said that we have way more than we need, because you really only need about a year's worth in tax pool. We have more than double that. So we certainly could start moving down that way. We don't have to do that, obviously. If we want to continue to wait, I'm, being on the council for a while, I'm disappointed that we keep waiting. We keep waiting to make the move on this kind of thing, and we keep just putting down more what my dad used to call bubblegum patches, And so I'd like for us to be open-minded to that. The other part that I would like to make sure that people understand is that the state has put a lot of constraints on us being able to change our tax rate. The not-to-exceed tax rate is way lower than it used to be, so it's difficult for us to be able to increase our taxes for expanding services, for doing major projects like this. So I do want to be careful that we just automatically decide to keep the tax rate, or I shouldn't say rate, to keep the income amount the same, because we are going through hyperinflation right now. The cost of doing anything is way more expensive than it used to be. So even though I would love to not increase our budget, we may need to. But I do want to hear from the PowerPoint, because I know that you've done some analysis around what we're going to get from tax pool, which may be able to offset that, and some other things. So, and I appreciate your letter. I read it twice, and it's really well done. And the packet you put together with the percentages and then the history is very well done too. So I really appreciate that. So yeah, to set the stage of why I asked for us to have a special session, I guess I just wanted to make sure I said that. Thanks.
Go right ahead.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm grateful let you have a small budget compared to what I've done in the previous past. Trying to get it all underneath my belt within 4 weeks, even though it, seems like it wouldn't take a lot of time. It was somewhat of a little bit of a monumental task, just trying to go down different rabbit holes to figure out how the city's been operating and where we want to go. But the budget in front of you this evening is a balanced budget. Revenues equal to expenditures. I've also, the budget is about $84,000 more than last year. And it includes a tax rate decrease of about 2.5 cents, which is at the no new revenue tax rate. Mayor, if you want to hit the enter, we'll go to the, and let me back up a little bit. So the PowerPoint, no, go backspace there.
I'm trying.
There you go.
There you go.
Now hit enter.
That's what I did. Right there.
There you go, okay. So the PowerPoint itself is a very brief PowerPoint. I don't feel like I need to go through every line item at this point. You've had the budget, at least drafts of the budget for 2 weeks. And I sent you the final proposed budget about 3 or 4 days ago. That, I know it's a short amount of time, but the numbers haven't changed much from there. So after I go through the PowerPoint, then I'll open up the floor for you to ask me questions or any comments about the budget as well. So the upcoming budget calendar. So next week, we have our regular meeting. We will discuss the proposed tax rate, which currently what is being proposed is no new revenue tax rate. And basically what that is that we're going to collect the same amount of money as we have this current year. Then we'll also call and set a public hearing on the budget and the tax rate next week as well. And then on September 9th, we'll conduct both the hearings on the budget and tax rate and then adopt the tax rate. And then the new fiscal year starts October 1. Mayor, if you want to go to the next
Yes, sir.
PowerPoint slide. Okay, the proposed property tax rate for 2024. The proposed budget includes, again, the no new revenue tax rate, which is .224604, compared to last year's tax rate of .25. The no new revenue rate is intended, like I said earlier, to bring in the same amount of money and revenue as we have in this current year. Very next PowerPoint.
Can I interrupt you for a second? So when I saw that highlighted is intended,
Right.
why is it just in the intention?
Because you're also going to be collecting some money off of improvements, and I'm going to talk about that on this next slide here a little bit. And that's why I highlighted it, because then you'll go, well, I'm bringing in $2,000 more. I mean, it's not a lot, but you're also collecting off of some new improvements. So.
Okay.
So one more question. So there's
Right.
the no new revenue tax rate. Then I see in one of our pages in
Voter
this packet,
approval tax rate.
the operations tax rate. What's the difference between those two? It's
Where's that one at?
it's a
Just skip ahead.
no.
I think that was.
It's before that one.
What was the rate on it, Justin? You recall?
Oh, he's talking about
Yeah, it's like it's this page.
2248.
One that's up on the screen, that's my
Similar.
similar.
Yeah. So it's like no new revenue tax rate, no new revenue tax, revenue maintenance operations.
It was page 1 of the proposed.
Okay. Let me pull that up here. Let me see that real quick.
Here.
That's no new revenue maintenance operation tax rate to continue collecting the same amount of money to pay for your operations, your own, as you had budgeted last year. And so they're showing .224802, which is minimal. I mean, you're probably talking a couple $100 difference.
Okay.
You're not talking about thousands.
Yeah.
Very minor.
And then the voter approval tax rate. So that's if you go above that number, you got to get voter approval. Is that
If you go
okay?
above the .239823, then you're
Okay.
going to have to get voter approval.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
And if you run the numbers on the .2398, with the total assessed value, you're probably looking at about another $16,000 to $20,000. It's not that much.
Okay.
Between the no new revenue
Right.
and the voter approved is only 16 to 20,000.
Thank you.
You know how they How is that calculated? Because I know they changed that, how the calculations are for the voter approved tax rate.
Well, I got the whole voter calculation worksheet. I can send that to you so you can see how they actually calculated it, or we can go through it this
Because it's
evening.
not just a simple percentage.
No, it's not. There's
It has-
several steps to it.
It has to do with how much the assessed rate of the overall value of the town's property, not the town's
Right,
property,
right.
the property inside the city limits of the town.
Right.
How much that went up versus some other number.
Well,
Like you do like the square root of your avenue, your grade whenever you're in high school or something. I don't know, it's really complicated.
It is-
But I know
well-
that they constrained us quite a bit to where, my concern after they put that in place is that when you hit in situations like we're currently in, where inflation is high and may stay high, they probably will reduce rates, but we're probably not gonna have 0% interest type 14 years of that like we had in the past. They've made it to where I'm concerned that we won't be able to stay up with inflation. And you'll have to start just cinching your belt on what we can do. And so for a town like St. Paul, who hasn't had a very high rate on purpose, and I get that, that is wanting to be a more involved town, to have more services, including courts and to be able to do inspections and things like that, right? It puts us in a pickle because we may not be able to do that without either at least going right up close to where, I mean, I don't know, it's hard to convey. I think what I'm trying to say is that the state has trapped us in, and they've done it because of the politicians there are trying to get a good name for themselves to make sure that they're fighting property tax. And I get that, I understand it. For large cities, especially, and you can tell if you follow the state politics, there's a concern from the state legislature's point of view on how large cities in Texas are run. So they put a lot of constraints around how you can increase your taxes, mainly focused at those large cities who have much higher tax rates than we do. But it's affecting small towns like this who have started out from a much lower tax rate and may need to be able to stay with the times. You've got these bigger cities, they're probably charging way too much. They can cinch their belts more than a small city who
That's right.
only has one full-time employee and a couple of part-time employees and is having to use a bunch of services. And so I'm concerned about staying only at the existing income because we're already constrained quite a bit by the state of Texas. And even if we adopted the rate right up underneath where it triggers the voting, it would still be a tax break for most people in the cities. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. So to answer that, you'd asked a couple of questions there, or at least alluded to them. But it used to be where cities had an 8% rollback, which I think you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And that's what really got cut. I think they dropped down to like about 3 or 3.5. And that's what's hurting the smaller cities now. You know, it used to be where you could increase your taxes up to about 8%. And you wouldn't have to be concerned about a rollback rate. And now it's, I think it's around 3.5. But smaller cities do have what they call a clawback rule. That's not the exact term, so don't use that. But if you have not captured all the revenues, I think maybe for the past 3 years, that you could have, like with the voter approval rate, you could, in the upcoming fiscal year, call some of that back in if you want to set a different rate. So you do have that option. And I can share that, I'll send that to you. as
Okay.
well.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. So
Yeah.
that has to do with only small towns?
Small towns, if you're collecting less than $500,000, which we are, in property tax, you could, this isn't the appropriate term, but you could claw back a percentage of what you haven't collected in the previous fiscal years. But there's only so many fiscal years you can go back, up to a certain amount. And it's a small town rule specifically for communities like the town of St. Paul.
Okay. And not that I don't want to do that, by the way,
Right.
just for everybody here, what do they call this thing, a diet?
Dais.
Dais? I just always called it a curved desk. But at the dais, I'm not looking to exorbitantly increase taxes or anything like that. I just want to make sure that we understand the constraints we're up against, because it's hard to meet the mail on what I think we clearly heard from citizens that they want the town to be more involved in the ability to enforce, to first identify where ordinances are not being followed, and then second, enforce where they're not being followed, and then also also to be able to maintain our streets to a level that we're not having to have such patchwork of roads. So just some thoughts there. Sorry for derailing.
No, that's all right. But the other thing I want to mention too, Robert, in the budget, I included the max as far as the total assessed value that we could collect on. Because the certified total appraised value is actually about $8 million less. So I think we have close to about $8 to $9 million that's under protest. But I also included that $8 or $9 million in the calculation, because we're more than likely going to hit that. If you look at where we are in collections today, and even if I get 100% on the total possible taxable value, we're still going to receive that amount of money. So I pulled it in as tight as I could to get as much revenue coming into the town. Because you're going to.
So you went ahead and assumed that.
I assume that all that under protest is going to be
Is going
collected.
to all be collected.
Right.
So that's more optimistic.
Right,
Probably
right.
should be, right?
Right. Well, I don't know, because Collin County just received a letter today. They're assuring 100% collection. And then if you go back and you look at their collection rates for the past 2 or 3 years, they've been like at 103%, 105%.
Okay.
So they've obviously been collecting some back taxes.
Okay.
But if I look at where you are in collecting property taxes today, the current year, and the budget figure I have in there, you're right on target.
Okay.
Okay. Just the slide up here is just a property tax rate comparison to the current fiscal year versus the proposed tax rate. Just kind of walk you through this a little bit, and this will get to the question you had earlier, JT, about, the additional funds that you see highlighted down there, the 1,908. So if you see the last year's tax revenue, we had a total taxable value of 167 million, the tax rate 25 cents. Last year's total tax levy should have been around 442,000. And then this year's tax revenue, including new property, you get this year's total taxable value of 197 million with the no new revenue rate of 0.22. And this year's tax levy, we're somewhere right around 444,000. So you can see the difference. That's where we're getting that extra income, roughly $2,000. Any questions? Okay. Next. I just put this little chart in to give you a comparison of where our property tax rate will be with other surrounding communities. Well, what our property tax rate in comparison today is. St. Paul's the second lowest in the area, New Hope coming in right above us, but you have a fairly relatively low tax rate in the area.
Yeah, and again, so we know Parker has a better court system than we've had, and we know that Parker also tends to do, when they do new roads, they do concrete roads. So just some thoughts there, just point that out.
Next.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then these are just revenue budget highlights, and I don't want to beat this to death, but I'll talk about the property tax rate again a little bit. So the adopted budget, if you're looking at the budget worksheets that I sent you, you'll see 438,578 was budgeted. Your actual levy for this year is 442,000. And then proposed for this year is 444,000. And again, that's where you'll see the difference, that I'm projecting roughly about $1,900 more than what you collected this year. Sales tax has been relatively flat since 2022. I think in 2022 we're about $317,000 we collected. And the year after that we're somewhere around $315,000. My estimates for year end right now we're probably going to be right around $310,000, so we're coming in a little bit under. So I think that's a conservative estimate. Franchise tax, there's a couple of franchise agreements I'm going to want to audit this year that I'm going to want to look at a little bit closer. I won't get into that at this point. Even though I'm showing a little bit more franchise tax, I'm pretty much on target as far as the budget figures I put in there, what you can anticipate to collect. There's one in particular that you probably caught on to that is a little bit lower, and that's one that I want to audit and look a little bit closer at. Building permit fees, they're just a little bit lower this year, and the reason for that, I dropped the amount of money that we're gonna receive for plats this year. I think we're at 5,000 current fiscal year, and I'm gonna drop it down to 2,500. Building permit fee on the revenue side and expenditure side, I'm gonna keep flat right now. Since we're moving forward with a new building inspection services, I wanna get that moving forward along with a new fee schedule. And once we have a new fee schedule, my goal is to have that fee schedule in front of you by October at the latest. I will probably come back and ask you to revise the budget, but I just don't have the time right now to go through all those hoops. But the goal for building inspections is for it to pay for itself. I would say that's the low bill as far as building inspection services. And then interest earned, I spoke about that briefly. The current budget year, you have 20,300 in there. And this year, I'm proposing 98,000 just to balance the budget. You're averaging right now somewhere around $10,500 a month in interest on your two tax pool accounts. So you're easily, you're at 120, 130,000 in interest is what you're earning every year.
Well, so if you don't mind, can we take a break and
Sure.
talk about that?
Sure.
So I guess maybe I didn't have time to look this up, but why did we not get more in this fiscal year? Did the interest rates not pop up until, I guess, late? It seems like they were in December or January.
You mean why?
Is tax pool lagging? Does it take a while for it to start kicking in?
I would have to
thought
go
we were
back.
starting to get like
Robert,
pretty good interest rates around January.
I would have to say this year, they haven't been too bad. I mean, the first of the fiscal year, when I went back, I've only been able to look at QuickBooks because I didn't have access to tax pool. But what I saw being booked early on was, it was a little bit over 4, maybe 4 or 5. But then it bumped up all of a sudden to, you're a little bit over 5,000. I think that was right around January. And it could be, if you remember the beginning of the fiscal year, you were just at 2 million in tax pool, maybe a little bit under it. But your tax pool count right now, you're sitting at 2.3 million, and you may be close to 2.4 million by the end of the fiscal year. But I'm estimating year end right now, probably around 2.32, 2.33.
Well, that counts for maybe 10% of it, but
Right.
not the whole. That's quite a bit more, right? It's
Right.
about 80,000 more than we're expecting in interest.
Yeah.
And the two questions are, first I'm focusing on why there was not as much interest in this fiscal year, because I would think that I would.
In the budget?
Yeah, well, not in the budget. Are we talking about budgets here?
Okay.
Is this budget on the screen?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That I understand.
That's a budget on screen.
The actuals, do we have the actuals on that? Do you know on how much we actually? It should be here.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like it's close to what you.
Well, yeah.
If we're looking at the white column,
Yeah.
it's 8040-1 and 8040-6, which is tax pool and tax pool prime interest. Then that's about 80,000. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the next part of the question is, and I know we're not, I think of Johnny Carson with the whole thing up against his head,
Yeah. Yeah.
98,000, 200 interest rate next year. Yeah, well, so we'll see. I mean, well, they are probably going to reduce interest rates. We already are seeing interest rates falling regardless of what the Fed does. And so what you're saying is that you're being conservative because, right, if you just projected what we're getting right now, it'd be around 120. So
Right.
you're going with this 98 number. Okay.
Right, and I think
That's fair.
I think it played a little Johnny Carson in
Yeah.
where I think, I told you, obviously, I think the feds are gonna, I think we all know that, you're gonna see rates go down possibly, but I don't think they're gonna be drastic, and that's just me taking a stab at it.
Well, like I said, it's still conservative compared to what we're seeing right now, because right now we're
Right.
at about 10K a month, so.
Right.
Yeah, okay, I'm on board. I had to
Okay.
talk through it with you,
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Next slide. And these are just a few budget expenditure highlights. Accounting fees proposed for this year is $28,000 versus $22,000. Obviously, our audit fees have gone up this year. I think they added 10% more. But something they started doing differently this year as well. The current fiscal year, you paid for the 2023 year-end audit, which was roughly 16,000, I'm sorry. But then you also pay half towards this upcoming audit, which was $11,000. So they're billing you differently now, and obviously the increased cost of 10%, you're going to look at a higher cost on your auditing services for the upcoming year. Town engineer, I left town engineer fees pretty consistent. Fire, EMS, and law enforcement. Obviously, you got a new contract or interlocal agreement that you're going to consider next week for the ambulance service. You're looking at roughly $28,000, $29,000 for medical transport services. And then for fire protection services, you were initially paying somewhere around $2,100 per call. And we're going to be going up to about $2,300 and on an average of 72 to 84 calls a year. And that's how we came up with the budget figure for fire, EMS, and law enforcement. TML insurance, we were able to drop that. We dropped the deductible on the real and personal property we increased it. We increased the deductible on real and personal property from $500 to $2,000, which brought down our cost. Legal fees, I dropped legal fees a little bit for the city attorney. I've only budgeted $1,000 a month, so that's why that came down. And then road and maintenance, I kept just consistent until we get a way forward as far as what we want to do with roads. I felt it was best to keep those numbers as currently budgeted. Any questions on those particular expenditures?
So 1,000 a month for legal fees? Or
12,000 is what I budgeted for this upcoming year.
12,000?
For the city attorney fees.
Okay, and then there's other fees, I guess.
Right, like legal publications and, yeah.
Okay.
So you kept it flat, and then, I mean, you've driven the town a couple times, I think I've heard. So I know we've got a couple of sore spots. We keep talking about Drain Lane and St. Paul Road as far as roads go. But what's the impact going to be of our new 30-month project?
Huge,
So
huge.
I'm just touching on what Mr. Sims was saying is, if we go and fix stuff, go or do concrete or whatever, it's not just gonna get torn out by that.
Well, yeah, that's why I wouldn't propose, and I think whenever KSA looked at this, they were kind of factoring that in, and I can pass this down, I guess, if people want to look at this. And the price on this for concrete was estimated at $800,000. Of course, that would have to be bid and all that kind of stuff. But they were looking at St. Paul Road first because it's not going to, more than likely, the traffic on it is not going to be impacted by this road because it's not a bypass.
Yeah.
Drain Drive may be impacted, and even Paul Wilson Road might be impacted. So that's why I think that's one of the reasons, as I recall, the KSA was saying that would be where we might start. And they found it as the top priority to start with. And they're also supposed to be, I don't know if they're doing this, I may not derail too much on this, but I know they're supposed to be looking at a more comprehensive plan as well. So
When you say conference plan, what did you
they
request?
they gave us a plan about, so they gave us a plan about 5 years ago, and we've been marching towards that plan and knocking things out. And so now it was time to take that plan, both for roads and drainage, and update it with current, where we're at now.
And that's one of the meetings, my initial focus when I first got here was budget and figure things out financially. But that's one of the meetings I want to set up here relatively quick is with KSA, so they can bring me up to speed as far as what has been taking place and kind of, so I can help move this forward as well also.
And, I think I'm on board with everything that you have. I did have some questions in here once we get to the end, but to the roads point, I think St. Paul Road is a good place to start. I also am sensitive to there may be other avenues we might go down. I'm just concerned that we'll look into them, and once again, well, it didn't work, you know.
Right.
And Lucy pulls the football, and here we are another year, and
Right.
we haven't made progress.
I don't think you could, I think you can continue pursuing those avenues at the same time, maybe do them side by side. So if someone does pull that ball, if we're not falling flat,
Yeah.
that's what I would suggest.
And I guess
Yeah,
what-
if that's what council.
Because what you're, I think you alluded at one point that there may be some funds that we could go seek.
Well, I think there's a couple of avenues. So obviously the community project funding that I sent to all the council members, but that's going to take some time. But I think there's a couple of other avenues that, quite honestly, I think the Army Corps of Engineers and the county and the city, all three should partner on that, for obvious reasons. I think all three entities should come to the table and pay the fair share.
Right, okay. And then the other thing to, so I think I just, and perhaps we should have a focus, we probably should have a focused discussion on this once you have more data about those options and what KSA has done. Maybe have KSA reapproach their priority that they gave us about, I guess it's been about 6 months or so ago on St. Paul Road still being the one that they.
We had a meeting when Leanne was still here,
Yeah.
with KSA and
Right.
IBO.
Right,
And so at that meeting, the only figures that were inaccurate was both of them kind of giggled at the 800,000.
okay.
They said it was a lot more than that.
That's what I thought.
And so we need to get a finite kind of estimate on that.
Yeah. Well, that
Just so we can move forward, we do have 2.3 million that we can pull from
Yeah.
to do some of these projects for the public. I agree 100%. I think there's, like Scott, we've been talking about, the Corps, they just got a new guy, signed a contract down here, he's cleaning up Collin Park. So because of that, he's been battling with the Corps. The Corps is a hard animal to crack, right?
Right.
But at the same time, there may be some federal funds that we might be able to use
Right.
in order, because it accesses
So we
to
should
the.
probably have a meeting with KSA,
Correct.
maybe invite the Corps to be here, certainly invite the Collin Park folks to be here to talk about it and get more of an idea of where we can go. I'm fine with leaving it out of this budget, I'm not gonna push for that tonight, but.
Yeah, just keep in mind, that's why I left the placeholders in there. So if we want to move forward with a plan of action where it's St. Paul Road or some other direction, we can
Right.
tap into those funds.
And we need, and it needs to, like I said at the meeting, when Avi will put this in front of us with that number that I do think is low. It needs to be more than just St. Paul Road. I think we've already identified some other roads, and I'm open to whatever KSA or anybody else that can give us more.
What number did he provide you?
800K.
He didn't, they were just, WOPAC, which was Adam, was just kind of, and even Aviel didn't bring it up till Adam did, and then he agreed with him, which Adam looked at the numbers and said those numbers were based on county estimates, which were basically what it would cost county to do it. The only problem is that didn't factor in labor. That didn't factor in the real cost if they bought from outside of county to get any of the products.
Right.
So they weren't sure exactly on the number, but they did know that it was going to be quite a bit more. And again, nobody dialed down on it at that particular meeting, and so it just kind of came down to that issue saying it was more, and it kind of died off at that point, trying to get Abiel to come in with, the drainage plan was mentioned at that meeting. And we need to bring that back up and back in because
Drainage plan,
for the city, for the town.
you have an old drainage master
Correct.
plan.
But since you have, it was mentioned there just because since we have the carefrees on the corners that have changed some
Right.
drainage issues with, again, my big thing has been with TxDOT coming through here, where they're gonna put their water is gonna increase. So I think to get ready for that concrete streets you're talking about, which I'm all for, we need to make sure we get that drainage situated first, otherwise we end up tearing up concrete streets to fix the drainage. And so, I'm with you, I wanna get some things done,
Right.
but this is gonna be a 5-year,
Yeah, it's gonna be
possibly a
longer.
10-year plan.
Right, and St. Paul might be the first one we do,
Mhm.
because it makes some sense there, and I think it is in a condition where it's ready for that kind of thing. We don't have to do it with this immediate budget. Once we find out more, we can amend the budget without changing tax rate, of course, and you can just, when we refurbished, by the way, when we refurbished this building, I never thought we'd get that money back. I thought that was it. Okay, now we're gonna finally get rid of this massive surplus that we had. And we spent about $800,000 on this building, and we got it right back. I mean, within a year, we were back up to $2 million in the bank.
Well, and again, at the
So-
interest rate that we're,
It wasn't an
drawing,
interest- it wasn't an
allows
interest
us to do some
Yeah.
projects just based on the interest.
Oh, that's true.
we're getting.
And we'll see how long that lasts, but
Yeah.
that's true. So the point is that there, I think we can do the same thing, and perhaps we'll get our coffers refilled again. I don't know that we need to refill them to that amount of money, because I forget who it was, one of the council persons that no longer is on the council, their big thing, they were more hawkish about making sure we spent that money, because we've already taxed the people and taken that money, and it's just sitting in a bank, and so it should be used to better the town. We shouldn't be sitting on it, because we have more than enough in the bank.
Well, there has to be an explanation why
Why we would
you're
sell
doing
it.
it. Because there are some smaller cities that do pay-as-you-go, and that's
Yeah.
basically the way you're set up right now.
Right.
And to do a road improvement program, I mean, $2 million, that's gonna get you some improvements.
Right. But not a lot.
But it's a pay-as-you-go.
Yeah, well, we really only have about, if we want to keep a year's worth of, in the bank, we only have about 1 point something. Just go ahead and subtract $1 million off of that.
Right.
Anyway, where I guess I'm going is that the 5-year, 10-year plan needs to include perhaps bonds or something like that to be able to do that kind of thing, or some kind of, help from federal government or whatnot, and a combination of all the above. Otherwise, we're still going to be nickel and dime in a lot of these roads. Especially
I
train
mean,
drive.
and that's one of the things that we'll talk about, Robert, when we have this workshop as far
Right.
as, road improvements, but alternatives for funding.
Yeah,
I mean, you could go out on a $4 million bond issuance, and with the money you have in the budget right now, what is it, somewhere a little bit over $250,000 for road improvements, that would cover the P&I.
right.
And then if you took $1 million out of your investment funds, that's $5 million for drainage and road improvements right
Right.
there.
Which I guess where I'm going is that St. Paul, finishing the concreting of St. Paul is gonna be the smallest concreting job we'll probably do. When you talk about drain drive, and you're probably talking, I mean, if I had to guess, it's probably gonna be all of that 5 million to do drain drive, believe it or not. Concrete's crazy expensive.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not talking to you, I'm talking really to everybody here, it's very expensive. And I think we should do it because it really sets the legacy up of the town to have good roads and good systems. And I agree with the drainage and all that kind of stuff. Sorry for harping on this, but this is something that I want us to start really thinking about when we're setting budgets and start, moving in that direction and knowing how to handle it. I don't know that I'm really calling for us to change anything in what you're proposing here, but I do want us to just start thinking about that.
Well, and I'm gonna, just so you know, I'm fixing to open doors with the county.
Yeah.
I'm fixing to start, well, we've already opened the doors with TxDOT once, had one meeting with them. I'm fixing to start having the weeklies with them so that we can, I really hope that they can help our drainage situation, which will speed up the road improvement
Yeah.
instead of us having to make ready. And so hopefully we're gonna get there. That starts this week. And again, it all goes to what you're talking about, is to be able to furnish something to everybody,
Right,
as far as that goes.
right, okay, thanks.
Mary, you want to go to the next slide, please?
Yes, sir.
This is just showing you the three significant expenditures for the town, and obviously the road and maintenance funds that we have set aside, $250,000 accounts for 27% of the budget, and then payroll expense, you're at 22%. I do have one thing I need to mention regarding payroll expense. There needs to be an adjustment. I need to make an adjustment to the SEP and the TMRS. Probably, I think you have in the budget somewhere around $9,000 or $10,000, if I remember correctly. It needs to go up to $17,000. However, I'm going to put an asterisk by that number, and more than likely, when we actually do another actuary study as far as TMRS, you may see that come down. But I want to be on the conservative side to make certain I have the right number in there. But I think you'll end up having some savings actually in payroll before we get into the new calendar year.
According to the budget, there's a 31% reduction.
Right. Right. And that needs to go up. So that will probably be the only change that I'll make to the budget before next week, unless you give me other changes. What I'm going to do is try to move like certain funds around to balance it out. May look at the interest, but I'm going to have to add some additional funds, and I'll let you know. But comes from. And of course, we have Wiley Fire and the ambulance that accounts for 21% of the budget as well. Those three items, basically 70% of your budget.
And that went up this year by, wasn't it about 29,000?
Well, you're, are
On
you
the
talking about?
EMS, on the EMS side.
EMS was 29,000, but you're also going up on the fire protection services, because they're charging you 2,300 per call.
So that should have still this year, but like for next year, is there a way, are there ways we can look at to reduce that?
I've talked to Ken about one idea. I don't know if we're at that point where we want to discuss that. Or,
Yeah, go ahead.
but there are some other alternatives, but I think we need to do a little more vetting and business planning before we start talking about them, because it involves other entities that would have to come to the table, and before we start talking with everyone else as far as creating a regional potential system, we need to have a game plan that we can go out and communicate correctly to who those other partners may be. I know I'm talking in very
High level.
high
Yeah.
level,
Yeah.
but I don't want to say, because we just don't, it's been 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And, but we'll get there. There are some alternatives.
Okay.
And you might have been, Robert, back in the day, you might have been part of it. It was mentioned to me about like the ESD districts and things of that sort. So usually they get shot down. But at this particular time, Parker just had to sign with Wiley's EMS. So the door is opening
Yeah.
up.
Yeah,
Well, it's a
And that's a potential
We had a
tool.
really good one, and then they went to Tyler, and then things just.
Well, that was East Texas Medical,
Yeah.
and that's who contracted with Wiley.
Mhm.
What the mayor's talking about is, I briefly had spoken with them about creating an emergency service district.
Yeah.
And there's politics involved with it, that's why I didn't talk about it, because it's a separate taxing entity. But there's a way to make that work to actually lower the
Sure.
value,
Absolutely.
or lower the, not
Cost.
value, lower the tax rates in the communities that are participating.
Right.
And that's the business plan I'm talking about.
Sure.
That- I think that would be a good alternative for at least 4 entities in this area. But again, before we start knocking on doors,
Right.
I want to do a game plan.
Yeah, you bet.
Did we really spend $0 so far this year on road maintenance? Am I reading that right?
That was a question too. Is that just because you didn't have the data? We
What
certainly-
was that?
Road maintenance, on annual maintenance and major projects, we have spent money on the white column, the actuals for this year on roads. We have, because I've seen them do work, maybe they just haven't billed us yet.
Well, I will tell you, my actuals came from QuickBooks through June.
Okay, they may not have billed us yet.
Okay.
But they need to get after
Like
it.
for my
I know
street.
they've already done work.
Like for my street,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that, and I know they've done some bubble gum patching back to my dad's term for it down our way, so that usually costs about 15 to, 70K. So,
It was about, they're trying to keep everything under 49,000 per deal. So on
okay.
the asphalt, when we talk with Adam, he does the asphalt repair
Mhm.
at that time of the year, and he'll come back in the fall after the temperatures drop and do the
Right.
crack seal. And that usually, between the two, is about 100,000. He tries to keep it under that 50,000
Right.
amount. So keep in mind that as we work towards that plan, which I'm all for it, that we're fortunate in one aspect, which is, Adam said, of all of Collin County, we have the best asphalt roads there are in
Sure.
Collin County.
Yeah.
So that buys us a little window to
That's
be
why I
able
say 5 to 10
to
years.
put those,
Yeah,
put
we've
those
got
plans
time.
in place.
We've got time.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I've driven, not all the town, but especially when we were having the drainage issues, I tried to drive as much as I could. And a lot of the roads are in great shape because they don't have that much traffic on them. It's
Yeah.
just, the ones that I mentioned have a larger amount of traffic, and so they just, over time, especially with the heavy trucks, it just tends to get nice. So, but the point is, it's not zero, or they haven't billed us, I don't know which it is, but we've certainly spent money, we certainly have had WOPAC do work.
Yeah, it should be about 140,000, I would think,
I'll go back and double check.
Maybe
for the
they
2
don't.
projects that I know of, about 140. So,
So I guess since we're looking at breaking down numbers, so for the town engineer, so I guess line item 9015-10, so we had 100,000, I guess 2023 and 2024,
Mhm.
and we're keeping the same. But to the prior years, or I guess we've only got 7,300 actual. Is there a reason why we need to keep that at 100?
Again, going back to like the major projects and the engineer, if you're gonna do a major project, you're gonna be paying for some engineering services.
Understand.
And I thought, we really don't have a plan right now, Ms. Trevino, as far as how we're gonna move forward with drainage improvements or road improvements. And either avenue, or both, you're gonna be spending some funds on engineering. So I thought we'd keep it consistent.
Yeah, I get those, but we do, so we were kind of checking here, and I guess our new system probably picked that up. But during that time that they came with that paper that I brought about that plan, they did say that they would start working on updating the comprehensive plan. That was a head nod, and the yes, we'll take care of it, and I'm on the job.
So we
So
should be,
from KSA.
we have a 5-year-old comprehensive plan that was given to us by KSA, the engineers. At this point, it's been something to go back to and
Right.
at least reference and say, hey, here are your outstanding
Right,
areas of concern,
right.
prioritized.
So when you say comprehensive plan, when I hear the term comprehensive plan, I'm actually gonna speak about that on the next slide.
Okay.
I don't know if we're talking about the same type of plan.
Then we'll
You may be speaking about a comprehensive plan for road.
areas of
drainage
concern.
Road and drainage.
Right. So comprehensive plan I was thinking about is more of a, putting together a business plan, land use plan, and I'm gonna speak about it a little bit.
That's not that.
What you're talking about is
It's
completely different.
maybe that's not the right term, but it's
Right.
certainly.
It's a term that the
it was a-
engineer used.
It is,
Right,
and maybe it's
right.
because he didn't know the right term, I don't know. But it certainly was a list of all the roads in the town, the condition that they were in, like you said, prioritized based on which ones should be worked first, what should be done, and then how much it would cost based on TxDOT standards. And so it was kind of overpriced because we don't usually have to pay that much. But it was fairly a detailed plan, maybe you don't call it comprehensive. And so getting that updated would be helpful, I think.
Okay.
So,
Did they also put together a scope of work that you approved and?
So
To
it
do
would-
the- to do the plan itself, to work the plan itself. They were supposed to get back with us on what it would, and bill us and talk about it, and that didn't happen. So I guess what's aggravating, I think, to both me and you is that we ask for things to be done, but they don't get done. So that's something that KSA, I think, needs to get on the ball with
Okay.
and start figuring out, what was their response to that. And perhaps we need to be more formal. Maybe it needs to be,
In an email, formal request.
RP, or what do you call it, RFP?
Yeah.
We need to be doing this.
RFQ for
Yeah,
engineer.
RFQ, yeah.
Yeah. So once I get past Monday,
Yeah.
I'll make that a priority, reach out to
Yeah,
KSA.
sure. I'm sorry, I didn't know you had more to go.
No, it's okay.
You didn't stay up here much, so.
Just real quick, we'll go to the next slide. And again, with 4 weeks under my belt, I did the best I could with coming up with what I thought would be some goals for this year. And typically what you do in a budget process, typically in April or May, you get with your governing body and you identify what your goals are going to be for the upcoming fiscal year, so you know how to delegate your resources. So I took my best step with the few conversations that I've had with all of you, and that is to develop a way forward for drainage and street improvements, which I think that's been very well communicated tonight, and we'll work on that starting next week. Identify funding sources to support drainage and street and drainage improvements. We spoke about that briefly. This is where I thought this is what you were talking about earlier. Initiate the preparation of a comprehensive plan to help us identify where we want to go in the future as a town as far as redevelopment, our streets, housing, and it creates a list of goals, and it will create with those goals, and I know you all are aware of this, objectives, and then milestones that we're going to hit over the next 3 to 5 years. But it's really putting a plan together for what do you want the town of St. Paul to look like in the next 15, 20 years. And I think that's something we need to look at, so we have some sort of direction for us today, but also future leaders who are going to be sitting in your chairs and in our chairs as well. But that's something I'll start working on down the road, and that's going to cost as well.
We had one at some point.
Right.
I don't know what happened to it because people can't seem to find it. It was presented, it's old, and it doesn't really matter because I don't know if you would start from that because things have changed quite a bit since then, because it has to be around 10 years old.
Okay.
So I'm glad to see that you're going to go down this route, because this is something that we definitely need
Okay.
to have as a roadmap for us.
We'll look for it. And then, of course, we spoke briefly about looking at opportunities for creating regional partnerships with the county and new cities. Execute an interlocal agreement with Parker for the municipal court. Streamline the development review process. There's a lot of work to do there. But two things that I would like to move on relatively quickly is amend the subdivision regs to include a development plat process, a minor plat process. Both those are, I would say, are very important for St. Paul to have on the books. Minor plat process would be more appropriate for St. Paul. It's not like you're going to have a lot of significant large developments. You'll have smaller developments that don't require a full-blown preliminary and final plat. A minor plat would be a lot easier and a lot quicker. The development plat process will allow you to have a little more control in the ETJ, and we'll talk about that as we move forward with that process. Increase the town's transparency through enhanced communication. Alex and I have talked about this. We'd like to start a Facebook page as well, do a newsletter. Those are the type of avenues that we're looking to implement over the next 12 months.
One point, there is a Facebook page out there, you need to claim it.
There is.
Yeah,
Okay.
It gets auto-created, I think.
yeah, I think it does, and you have to prove that you're the business. And I don't know where they got some of the pictures that are on there, but probably should claim it and take those off.
Okay.
Interesting, okay.
Okay.
We'll look at that.
Okay.
Didn't know
At least
that.
one of them that I can think of that has a controversial flag in it. So,
Okay. Okay.
Weird. We don't want that.
And of course, we're going to look at establishing a standard operating procedures booklet as far as the different operations, just like the budget. How do you develop a budget? What are the different steps you go through every year? We'll put that in place so whoever steps into our roles in the future and your roles, they have a way as far as how they can keep operations moving forward. And that's it.
And when can you start like posting the packets online, either P&Z or our packets?
I'd like to do that as soon as possible.
I have a meeting with Revise on Monday to start learning how to edit and more functionality of the website so that I can take that over.
Okay.
And hopefully from there, it shouldn't be too hard.
All right.
great. Feel free to streamline the website.
We've talked about that.
We're going to be working on several things with that website, I believe, here pretty quick.
Well, I think the mayor's been looking at some options for like, a code red and what else.
Civic Plus is who I'm really hoping towards for several reasons. Just so you guys know, in the budget, when we're talking about money, they're not much money in the bigger picture of things to offer that emergency services. But the reason, and Scott touched on it earlier, we're doing an interlocal agreement with Parker to be able to access for code enforcement, if need be, their court system at a huge reduction. But they're running into the same problem. Lucas is running into the same problem. The towns that are small are getting, by us subbing out to the bigger towns, they're eating us alive on dollars. So that ESD district, where in the past it has been a heck no, is very rapidly becoming a possibility. So with these other towns that are running a particular program, if that's a possibility coming up in the future, I'd like to be running that same program that just opens that window to make things, that transition might happen. Can't guarantee anything will happen, but it's worth a discussion. And I know I've developed some pretty decent relationships to at least have the conversation on dollars. So that's where it matters.
So I had a few questions if we're,
Okay.
and thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
And thanks for letting us interject as well, I appreciate that. The marina sign on the first page for 8045-1, I don't know that we're going to keep getting that, or I don't know how that's going to work, because they've already taken the signs down,
Okay.
and I don't know if we'll put them back. I wouldn't mind putting them back. I mean, we had a deal with them that they could put the sign up there for real cheap, because that's cheap to have an
Right.
advertising sign up.
Right.
And in return, they would give us citizens access to the park, have a little sticker to put on the car if they want access to the Collin Park.
We had that discussion with Woody,
Yes, yesterday.
yesterday he came by.
Yeah.
So the sign blew down in the storm. He hasn't put it back up yet, but TxDOT coming in, he's probably not going to
Right.
until after the fact.
Right.
Any resident in St. Paul can use that park
Yep.
for free,
Sure.
but he ran out of stickers.
Right, I heard about that.
So,
So we don't, so I guess what I'm getting at immediately is, are we still gonna collect $1,000 even though they're not putting the sign up? And then-
I don't think so.
Yeah, probably not have it on there.
So I'll take it out of the budget.
Yeah, and then of course we can address all the, what do we do after TxDOT's done and all that later.
Right.
But that was the one that popped into my, so if
Okay.
you're moving, I mean, $1,000 is a lot, but
No.
you're gonna have to kind of
Yeah.
account for it, I think. And then cleaning, you went up quite a bit on the cleaning services, so what's the reason for that?
Which item is
Oh,
that?
I'm sorry, on the second page, it's 9010-02 cleaning services, and the actuals
Oh,
are not near that, right?
they, for some reason, there were several, well, I shouldn't say that, I don't say that. We started paying the provider who's been providing the service, instead of $100 a month, $300 a month, and I think that started in January or
Okay.
February.
It wasn't budgeted last year.
Well, what you were paying before was $100 a month.
Right. I mean,
Yeah,
that was budgeted, but not the
right,
rest.
but not the 300.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and since they went up, I think there's something we need to look at as far as it may be time to bid out a little bit and see. There's just not much here,
Right.
so.
How often is the service being provided?
Every 2 weeks, I believe, or is it once a month?
I would say, it seems like it's one, I've been here.
I've been here,
Yeah.
about 6 weeks and he's come twice.
Yeah.
So maybe once a month.
Is it clean enough? Does it need to be more clean?
Here's the
I
thing.
would
I'm just-
prefer some
I
things
think
to
it
be
needs to be better than this, so.
Yeah.
Well-
Paying that much, they need to come more often, it seems like. But anyway, again, just
I'm
something to
o-
look at in the budget.
They try to come around when we have a council meeting,
Yeah. Okay.
just so that it's clean right, before
Really?
everyone's here.
Yeah. Okay.
I dropped that dust in the hallway back.
That was
We were
them.
doing that,
Well, no,
and that's the only place I didn't clean up, that's still there, so.
Look at
So
these
just
desks.
something to think about on the.
Well, I mean-
Yeah.
Well, honestly, I don't mind cleaning it myself. That's where I was heading with it.
Okay.
But I know this is a long-term vendor that's been working with the town for a while.
Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah.
Um,
I don't mind having services come do it so that you don't have to be distracted with it.
Yeah.
You don't have to have anybody else distracted with it on your staff, because you've already got enough to do. I don't mind having services come do it. I just want to make sure that they're budgeting that part right.
Okay.
And then the last thing I had was the budget for codification is, I think we're not using them enough. I think there's some services that we could ask them to do. Maybe we don't need to adjust now. Maybe this is something you can bring us later once we
Yeah,
have
let-
more interfacing with them.
What type of services were you looking for, Ron?
They have told us in the past, and maybe, I guess what I've learned is that we didn't buy the package that included them helping keep us up to date with state changes.
Well, that should be very basic.
Well, yeah, there's a package that you could buy, or you could buy it à la carte, I guess, to have them go review all of our codes against any changes
That's
with the
right.
state code. And I would hope and believe that that would be a lot less than having a lawyer do it, because they have, what do you call them, paralegals that can do that kind of thing, and they have probably search routines that can help them. So that kind of thing, and then, I don't know what all, every time we pass an ordinance, we should be sending it to them, and so making sure that that's been up to date over the
Right.
last year or so.
Right.
Because I'm not sure if they have, because it seemed like there's some stuff I was looking on the E-code website, our E-code website, that wasn't aligned with things that we passed. It still had old verbiage, and it should be up to date. Every time we pass an ordinance, it should be sent to E-code, and we should be updating
Well,
that.
maybe what we need to do then is just a wholesale review.
Again, it's
But-
gonna take time.
Well, I mean, you can do it within about a 12-month period. I've been through it a couple of times. And, it'll be up there though. I mean, you're probably looking at $10,000 to $15,000,
Yeah, I don't.
but I think it's money well spent.
Well, I guess the immediate thing that it'd be nice if you or our staff could do would be to look at the ordinances that were passed in the last 12 months and make sure that those are up on E-code and
Right.
the verbiage aligns.
Okay.
And then if you, from that, if you see that, wow, they're all out of whack, and maybe it's worse than just the past couple of years, then the full up,
Right.
redo might be worth it.
Yeah, we just, that doesn't matter. So the town administrator ordinances, we're gonna send those to ECO this week coming up.
Okay,
And the first one, I think you approved in May.
yeah,
The second one,
just last month.
Yeah, May and July.
Well, the other thing that, if you're gonna give them a call about that, you might ask too, it came up when they changed formats, they merged with another company, and Franklin did.
Well, it was
Anyway.
Franklin, originally it was Franklin, and then E-Code
Right.
got bought.
And so,
Or, I'm sorry, E-Code bought Franklin, sorry to interrupt.
no, you're fine. And so anyway, when it changed to where it's not user-friendly for the public. And the only reason that I mentioned that, back then, they had said, we can go back to the old method, which was a very good search engine, versus the way it is now. The only reason that matters is you're gonna get more phone calls from investors, from builders, and from contractors, because they can't find what they're looking for. Where the old system was really simple to find what they're looking for. So you might open that conversation up with them as well when you're checking on the ordinances, and just say,
Okay.
is there the old format? Because everybody could find things on that, and that would make y'all's lives so much simpler.
Okay.
What I heard is that Mr. Franklin was willing to come back out, because evidently he still works for that, I guess when he sold it, he became an employee of them.
Right.
And what I heard was that he was willing to come back out and talk to us since he was handling our account. And maybe that's what we want to do, is have him come talk to us. And he doesn't have to come out if he
Right,
just
right.
wants to do a Zoom call
Right,
with us.
right.
I think we all need to hear from him.
Okay.
Because we've had a lot of questions about E-Code and about what they can and can't do, and what we thought they was going to do, and what they didn't do, and all that kind of stuff. So I think that it would be really good over the next 3 months or so to get E-Code to come out and talk with us. And if we could get Mr. Franklin, great. If not, whoever their account rep is that's handling our account would be good.
Okay. Good feedback.
Why did elections go down so much? They went down 60% to $4,000?
What'd you have, 10,000
Yeah, it
in
was
the
10.
budget last year?
Yeah.
I would have, what was the, where's that number, where's that at, what's the number on that?
What's the number on that, Justin?
That is
I see
903.
it, I see it, yeah.
But that covers.
So if you look at
fiscal
what the
year.
actuals were in, for this past year, you were at 3,225,
Okay. Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah,
It's because we actually held an election.
right.
And we're gonna have the presidential election here as well,
Do
just so
we-
y'all know.
Do we have to pay for that as well?
No,
Okay.
no,
They can use the building, but we're not going to pay
Correct.
for it.
Okay.
We'll have a little AC, something like that,
Yeah.
but they called and asked, and I thought it was a good move to go ahead and have it here as well.
Yeah, sure.
Keep me out of that line at Collin College.
Well, for our people, it makes it easier, right?
So are we doing, that's a good question, are we doing early voting as well as?
It'll be,
Yeah.
oh,
Yes.
yes.
The calendar is posted on the bulletin board
Okay.
if you want to take a look at it.
All right.
we will get the website made.
I think,
Bear with me, I'm not a computer person, I'm doing my best.
so,
We'll get there.
things are, the motions are in place, and with Scott doing the budget, we've talked about certain things, and it's one of those where we're able to help and keep things neutral at this point with the budget, but we're still able to move forward. And I think that's the key, is to look at those projects and identify, even if it's 2 or 3 this year, to go ahead and take a look at that, set it up. TxDOT's gonna throw a curveball at us, because as they go through the town, we're kind of stifled until they get to a certain point, because we can't tie on to anything they do till they finish. And so I think it gives a huge opportunity, in my opinion, to look at the drainage not associated with TxDOT, as well as what's associated with them, and maybe assist some citizens there in preparation to be able to do some of those roads, i.e. Lakeview. That's a huge one right now. If there's something that can be done, and Avio can designate that, I think we definitely have to try. I just don't want, we can't do a forever ditch, and that's what Avio drew over on Lakeway. We have to look at maintenance. Me and Scott have talked at length about that, about Dillard has always said we can't touch some of these ditches, and me and Scott have discussed it and said, yeah, you can.
Well, what he's probably thinking about it, and it's just an assumption, you probably have several of your ditches and roads that may be prescriptive easement. And technically, those are still owned by
The homeowner.
the homeowner. But if you have a conversation with the homeowner that you need to make improvements, you can touch them.
Right. And so we have several areas that we can improve that in preparation to, just like your drain drive you were talking about, or St. Paul Road.
So you know,
So,
TxDOT said that they won't be officially redirecting traffic down Drain Drive.
Right.
So as a direct result, any damage that happens to Drain Drive because of the non-misdirection, or we're responsible for it. It's our road.
well, and I got some information that potentially help on i.e. a drain drive and roads like that, Lakeview even, which was, and I talked to Opie earlier today, and he said, what you want to do for sure is go take pictures of it now.
Yeah.
And he said, then at the end, if it's completely destroyed, then you can use those pictures to go back to TxDOT and say, you did it, and you might be able to get some kind of, and he thinks it's a possibility to get some kind of relief off of that. So it's worth a try. I'll take care of that this week. In fact, we're going to start doing that.
I think, Mayor, I want to give some clarity, and these gentlemen may know this, but when I mentioned prescriptive easement, probably define that a little bit. So right-of-way is the land that the town actually owns. I think everybody knows that. But then an easement is an easement that has been dedicated for a purpose, whether it's a drainage ditch or utilities, has been dedicated through a plat where the town has a right to put utilities in a certain area. A prescriptive easement is an easement because a drainage ditch has been put there, or a road has been put there, and the property lines go to the center of the road, but they were never platted dedicated to the public. But the public uses that drainage ditch or road all the time, so it's prescriptive easement. So that homeowner is still paying taxes on it, just like an easement. But the difference here is that if you want to make improvements within a prescriptive easement, you have to get their approval. So hopefully that cleared it up a little bit.
It does.
Maybe not. Yeah.
It does.
Any other questions?
It's kind of like an easement, a de facto easement, if you will.
Pretty much. So the counties years ago used to go cut streets without getting easements. And if the public's using a road for a period of time, it automatically becomes a prescriptive easement. It's just not dedicated officially in the records. So.
Well, I think where Dillard's comments were coming up more than
Right.
anything was his actions or answers were always, well, once you touch it, it's yours from now on.
Well, that's not true.
I agree with you.
He's a trainer. I mean, he's a very good trainer.
So, but there's got to be a contract or something we can work around to be able to give that kind of help to the people here. So in preparation for the next phase of wherever we go. So I think that's a possibility, so. Anybody else have anything they want to ask Scott about?
Just keep in mind, next week, your Monday meeting, you will be considering a resolution accepting the proposed no new revenue tax rate. That doesn't mean you're adopting it yet, but the wheels are going to start moving.
It's the proposed rate.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the past has been very confusing for new folks on the council, so nothing against anybody.
Right.
But you're not adopting the rate, you're adopting the proposed. You're not even really adopting, you're just passing a resolution for the proposed rate.
Yeah, you're
That will
saying-
go into paper.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to do that.
Right.
We have to go on record that this is going to be put in
Right.
paper so that
Right.
people will know that.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not until following meetings that we
Yeah, you'll have a public hearing on September 9th and adopt it. Now,
officially adopt.
yeah, going above that no new revenue rate could be difficult if that was changed. So what you publish, you could publish a maximum, you could go less. Does that make sense?
Right. You can't go, it's harder to go.
That's hard to go up. I've seen that done once,
Right.
but that went into a whole other different logistics to make it work.
No, the other thing to mention, I guess, just to prepare folks, is that even though we're going to adopt the no new revenue rate, because again, the legislature wants to make it very difficult for you to raise any taxes, you're still going to, more than likely, the math will still work out, especially since we're going to be above it by just a slight amount, that we're going to have to read this prescripted motion that basically says, I'm sorry for raising your taxes. Even though the rate's going to be the same,
Right.
it still makes you say that. The state law makes us say that we're raising your taxes. It's
That's
just the most absurd thing I've ever seen, not ever, but it's one of the most absurd things I've seen, because mathematically you're not,
Yeah.
but the state requires you to say that you are raising your taxes.
So after you've seen the proposed numbers, is there anything that you have, that you're wanting to contest or have any question to?
Yeah, because now's the time to do it, right?
Right, because now's the
Yeah.
time to discuss
I
it.
think I'm on board, because it's only 30,000, I did the math, and the
Right.
difference between the two is only $30,000. So it's probably not worth the hassle of it. We've got, 2.3 in the bank, of that, probably 1.3 we could use if we need to go over the budget during this year, 1.3 million in text pool. So if we do decide we want to do some bigger projects, or we want to do some at St. Paul Road or any other thing, redoing the ditches, we could tap into that 1.3 million. It's probably, I say 1.3 because we need to leave.
Right.
I definitely agree with leaving some money in the bank for a rainy day, but I don't think it needs to be as much as it is. So with that said, I think what I've seen and talked through, unfortunately, as you can probably tell, I'm more of an extroverted thinker. So talking through it helped me to understand, so I'm fine with it. I'm fine with where we're at. And then, we already mentioned the items, the line items that I think you might want to look into.
Yeah.
And so I'm good with it. What do you think?
Same, I had questions, but after looking at everything and talking everything through, I think we're good.
I guess the only thing that, when you spoke to that again, Robert, you drop tax bill down, you are gonna impact the interest and more balance in the budget right now.
That's true.
And even if you look at the previous fiscal years, they use interest at tax pool, even if it was minimal to.
So you just have to drop it down enough to cover the
Well,
interest.
well, I'm sitting here thinking about.
I'm not saying we're gonna do it, but if we.
But it's an option, and those are the things that we'll have to look at, the funding options, but, again, if you have a well-thought-out plan for improving all your streets and the drainage, then you should be able to put together a financial plan that will not impact the city too greatly.
That's right.
Because you have, getting back to what JT had asked about the engineers, we had $100 and some thousand set aside there. And then $250,000 for that's $350,000.
Right.
Now, of course, you don't want to spend all that on debt or something, but you could cut that back.
Right.
And still have funds in your budget that you won't have to rely on the interest as much as where I'm heading.
Right, okay, gotcha.
And again, while the interest is up there, we can always dip into that,
Right.
Well,
And we are, that's what we're, that's
Yeah,
what's
well,
happening.
that's what I'm saying.
That's how we're funding
If it
it.
drops, then at least we didn't hurt ourselves.
Because if it wasn't for the interest rate, we'd be talking about what do we need to cut.
Right,
Right,
that's
Yeah,
right.
So, thank goodness for inflation.
for now.
It's what's saving the budget this year, really, is that tax pool amount.
It is. There's a couple things that probably been cut, but
Well, yeah, it's good. So that would lead me to 25, 26, right? And I know that's not the problem now, but what does our forecast look like? Is this sustainable? How long is this sustainable at 22, So is it
22.4.
22.48? Yeah.
Depends on what new,
What new expenditures that we're going to incur? So if we were going to maintain cost, relative cost, with an increase of, let's just say, 3.5%, 5% cost of living increase.
yeah.
So what's the sustainability at, That's that.
There are, so I need at least a few more weeks to see how things are panning out.
I get this. That's week 5.
Yeah,
So,
and, but I think you'll be able to, you have areas that are fat, obviously, and that being we spoke about.
Right.
Your drainage, your streets, your engineering. Worst case scenario, you could draw off those and you're really not going to impact them that much. And for at least a year, and then back up and rethink where you go from here. And those are your larger ticket items, so it's low-hanging fruit that you can pick pretty quick. I think there are a couple other avenues that we could look at as far as higher hanging fruit that you're not going to get as much revenue out of, but they probably need to be cleaned up.
Understand.
But I will tell you, there are some certain expenditures that I would say within the next few weeks may change.
Okay,
That could help this picture.
fair enough.
Okay.
You got anything, Larry?
I only had one question that I had written down earlier. TMRS, you had 5, 6, or 7%. Is that a decision needs to be made relatively soon?
No, we'll probably, somewhere around the holidays, address it. Once we identify how we're moving forward as a team, we'll do another actuary study that will give you probably a number lesser than what's in the budget currently. That's what I'm saying. And there are different options. Obviously, I don't know how familiar you are with the TMRS, but you got the 5, 6, and 7% option that the employees pay in. The city is 2 to 1. So right now, I'm focusing on the max, the worst case scenario. But the governing body will have the right to decide, obviously, what direction they want to go. But by the time we get to that point, I think we'll have, the impact on the payroll will be less than what's shown in the budget.
And I'm going to ask the other question I heard while we were talking through it, but KSA seems to have a lot of history here. Is the right thing to do is to bid that out, or? I don't know anything about this.
They're basically our engineer that we
Yeah.
use for all this stuff, but we definitely would have to bid that out.
Well, I know we have to bid the job out.
Yeah.
But the question is it an opportunity to bid out the?
Oh, yeah, potentially, but they have been our, I guess, engineer of record, and that doesn't mean that we couldn't use somebody else.
Well, and again, my point is, I don't know if that's a good thing or a
Yeah.
bad thing. You know, relationships are great,
Right.
but are we paying too much?
Right, right.
Well, and my question came up in regards to that, is it kind of goes along the budget thing with KSA, which is, in our ordinances, we adopted Plain Old Roads and Thoroughfares, which is where their engineers have already gone through and completely done the engineering on what they use. We could adopt the new Plain Old Roads and Thoroughfares book or manual at this time. So the question is, when you have that book, which is engineering, and then you have KSA, you can still use, to me, you could still use KSA for the outline, but you don't have to have those specs written out when they're already
Right.
adopted. And what we're doing is, we've adopted one, and then we're paying an engineering company to totally re-engineer what we've already adopted.
Well, they're applying it to the situation that we're, so like for St. Paul Road, they would go take those specs and apply it directly to the situation with the elevation and the drainage and all that stuff to St. Paul Road, if we were to go that way, if we were to concrete it. So it's their,
Specific use.
it's their specific drawings that have to be done for that.
Well, I understand the drawings. I'm just saying, that's the question is are they duplicating something, or is there something we can cut out of that budget item? You know what I mean? Where it's a little cheaper.
What they're doing is they're taking the specs and from Plano and.
Re-engineering,
Applying it.
basically.
Well, yeah. all
That's my
different
question.
specs.
Are they using those engineering standards from Plano?
They should be, because it's in our ordinance, but that's two different, I don't think they're redoing, I haven't seen anything that they're doing where they're doing double work. That's not, I haven't
Boy,
seen.
and then outside of my street, I don't think we've had a whole lot of concrete repair.
Yeah, we had one other engineering thing they did, but it was specific drawings that they created for that, for that area, that venue, that applied our ordinances to it and showed how that would work and what the drainage should be and all that kind of
The
stuff.
painting for, they did the painting of the roads and
Yeah.
signage for Levon Parkway and.
Right. Stuff like that. So I haven't seen them, anyway, to answer your question, I haven't seen them doing anything that I would think would be duplicate work. They're certainly not duplicating what Plano's already got written down that I know of. I mean, I haven't seen any artifacts from them that show that. Everything I've seen from them is.
Well, that would just be my question to them, if there's a cost savings in there anywhere, which I'm not saying get rid of KSA necessarily. I'm just saying, if the engineers already use these specs, if that helps aid them in doing their calculations,
Right.
speeding up that process, which in theory should be a little bit of a savings, a little bit, even if it's
I think
not.
they're already doing that. WPAC, doesn't have people that do that kind of.
Correct.
So they need KSA or somebody, or some engineer, to your point, it doesn't have to be KSA to come up with the drawings of of what the job's supposed to look like, and, you know, how much rebar, and where the rebar is gonna be, and all that kind of stuff. Spacing the rebar, a lot of it's rebar.
And road base.
I mean, you know?
Rebar
The
and road
base
base.
is the key.
Yeah.
Huh?
The base
The
is the
base
key.
It's in my yard now, I have a lot of it. And they need to come get that crap out of there, so there we go.
I'll just add one more thing that JT asked about, the long-term expenditures. When we come forward, probably in October, with these schedule fees, revised schedule fees, that's gonna make a significant difference for the community. Because like I mentioned earlier, we wanted inspection services to pay for themselves, so we're not draining our resources. And then we'll talk about some potential administrative cost on top of that.
Right.
But those are little steps that we can take that will position the city very well for today and into the future. That's it.
Anything else? Any questions for Scott? Larry, did he answer yours?
Good.
Okay. So, we don't need to vote on the closing of that, so, council discussion, the staff can take any action required by the town staff for this evening's agenda items and future agenda items. So you saw a change in how Scott sets forward his agenda. They're minor, I think somebody had asked me that question, they're minor changes, but it's format mostly. So does anybody, do you have any input or would like to discuss Scott's method of going forward with consent items, format, layout, anything?
We talked about going this way in the past, and I think that it's fine to go that way. It was interesting that you said that that we would have put, I guess, what is it, item 5?
Regular agenda,
Yeah.
the resolution.
I guess it was the transmission of the funds resolution, that would have gone into the consent agenda.
Typically.
Maybe it would have. Maybe we would have asked the, I don't know, in the past. So here's my thought when you said that. In the past, we definitely like to chew on those kinds of things and talk about them. If we're gonna be more effective though, it's probably good for us just to read those ahead, just be done with it. And if we do need to pull it out, we can pull it out like you said.
Yeah, I mean,
Because we need to be faster and we need to be able to get more things on the agenda and get
Yeah.
through them faster. So
Yeah.
I get where you're going for sure.
yeah, there's no problem pulling one or two of those items off the consent agenda. I'm just trying to, and again, it's gonna take a while for the town to adjust, and I'm trying to put processes in place that will grow with the town of St. Paul. And this little format change here is pretty boilerplate. We see in a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
different communities, but typically they have agendas like this.
Sure.
But I thought it would be something at least that we want to start, so at least the groundwork is here for future staff and council.
I like it.
Any input for Scott? No? Okay. So, at this point, motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
That's it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, it passes, meeting is adjourned.
That wasn't loud enough.